Hello everyone, Reverend619 here, and we're going to be continuing my look into each of the classes where I would tier list the weapons on them. So we have the Knight Crusader, and we've got 4 weapons in this class that we're going to be looking at, and I'm going to be discussing where I think they all line up in comparison to each other. Now this is the Crusader class, which unlike its other partners that have the healing abilities with the banner and the trumpet, this has the oil pot, making it probably the more offensive of the 3. But however you like to play it, it's going to be down to personal preference and which weapon obviously you pick in each of the individual classes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down where I think each of the weapons stack up to each other in the objective game mode for topping the leaderboard. Now this isn't going to be the best, what is the best 1v1 weapon, because that is the faster one-handers, because they are much better than two-handers. But we're going to look into where I think they all place up to each other. At number 4, the two-handed hammer. When it comes to objective game modes, I honestly feel like that the blunt weapons are at a huge disadvantage because they can't cleave in their light attacks, and they need a lot more effort and work to keep up on the DPS to be able to get to the top of the leaderboard. Because you can't just riposte one person and then cleave the whole groups of enemies, and you can't counter as easily, take on multiple groups of enemies because obviously it stops on impact, it makes it a lot harder to win the 1vx. And until we get the patch where it's going to be able to charge up on a riposte for a heavy and even a feint, it's not going to be as effective, and you're always going to suffer from issues. Now, this isn't a bad weapon. It does a lot of damage to knights, and if you come up against knights, you're going to do very well. Unfortunately, one of the most popular classes in the game is the Vanguard, and Vanguard almost completely negates the bonus damage, and even against archers, you're going to need 3 hits to kill them, whereas most weapons can do it in 2. And in some cases, they have the special attack to do it in 1. And because of that, I just feel like the amount of kills and the amount of work you're going to have to do is going to be significantly reduced on kills and significantly increased on the amount of work that you have to do to keep up. So because of that, I feel like that when you compare it to every other weapon available in this class, that the two-handed hammer is going to be at the bottom. But once again, I am going to preface that I'm not saying it is a bad weapon and you can't do well with it. What I'm saying is you're going to find it a lot easier to use something else. At number 3, the Executioner's Axe. Now, I make it no secret that I think that of all the axes in the game, besides maybe the hand axe or the throwing axe, that the Executioner's Axe is the weakest. It does less damage than the Dane axe, and it has a lot of reach, but it is slow. I would much rather have a Dane axe, a war axe, a battle axe, or even the one-handed axe over using this. Because of how slow it is, a lot of people can interrupt your initiative as if it's not there, which again puts you at a huge disadvantage. And because the damage is lower than the other options, even though it's so slow, you're not going to be able to keep up as high a DPS. Honestly, the battle axe might do a lot more damage and the most of all of them. The war axe though, however, has the much better reach, so I would definitely say that the war axe is far superior, and the only reason the Dane axe is so good is because of how fast the overheads are and the Vanguard Raider's ability to carry 2 of them, so you can use them as a great throwing tool to one-shot archers. So those weapons are much better. Like I said, this weapon is slow, but it means that you can do really good drag overhead heavy, so you can catch people that you might not have been able to get because it is slow. So that is something that is quite useful that you can use it with. But in the 1v1 against something like a sword, you're going to struggle. In the 1vx, if someone is smart and paying attention and blocking and interrupting and jabbing you, you're going to have a horrible time at trying to fight on groups of enemies, and it is going to be very easy and very readable for people to counter. But you will still do very well with this weapon. It is going to do you better than two-handed hammer, but I feel like compared to what other options you have on the class, it isn't the best bang for your buck. And without the running attack on it, there is a lot missing from it that could be served better on another class. But overall, it is a very good weapon. Its thrusts are kind of weak, its overheads are alright, not as good as the Dane axe, and its horizontals are fairly weak as well, but it is still very good in the 1vx, and you are going to do very well with this weapon. And the Q is just absolutely fantastic and very rewarding to use, and it gets that bonus damage on knights and footmen. So yes, this one is what I would consider number 3. At number 2, the Messer. Now this might be controversial to some, because some people think this weapon's broken and overpowered, needs nerfing, but Honestly, I think it is one of the most readable and easy to counter weapons in the game. Now, the only thing that it really has going for it is semi-fast and it has good reach and good damage. But overall, the Messer, it's not even as good as the longsword in my opinion, because it's not quite as fast. It has a long time between combos because it doesn't combo very well. It doesn't have any of the special block or recovery properties that the longsword has. And even though some people find the drag thrust difficult to counter, they are very low damage compared to everything else this can do. I feel like as far as swords go, it is really outclassed in the 1v1 by the longsword, and it is incredibly outclassed in the 1vx by the greatsword. And I just don't enjoy using it. I feel like it's the easiest to read, the easiest to counter, and I consistently perform worse with this than what I've chosen for the number 1 spot. Now, this might just be a me thing, and other people might be able to argue they do far better with it, and if that's the case and you believe so, then obviously stick to your choices. Like, this isn't a list to tell you what to play and trying to phase out what's below it, but I feel like when you're trying to top the leaderboard, this isn't the one to go, and especially on the Knight class. It might be better on the Vanguard class because you have the running Q, but the Q attack is almost unusable as it is because the tracking's bad, the wind-up's very obvious, it's quite easy to avoid, the damage isn't even that optimal, so you don't have that big running in almost one-shot like attack on the Knight, which you can do with the weapon I've put in the number 1 spot, and I'll explain that when I talk more about that weapon. But I just feel overall that the Messer could be better, especially served on a different class. Like, I feel like it does better on the Vanguard class than it does the Knight class. So overall, I wouldn't put this above where it is. Yes, the horizontal's good, do good damage. The overhead, like, base damage is incredible. And the thrust damage, a lot weak, it is quite good with how well you can drag it. But overall, I would definitely consider this the number 2 spot. And I feel like you're going to do better with what I put at the number 1 spot if that suits your playstyle. At number 1, the Battle Axe. Now, this might be controversial, like I said. However, I feel like that on this class and playing this playstyle, that the Battle Axe suits it the best and will do you much better in trying to top the leaderboard. And the reason for this is quite simple, that although it is shorter than some of the options, the damage is higher and it is fairly fast and the reach is very usable. But most importantly, that when you are running with this weapon and you start your Q, you keep the full momentum of your running, and it gives you a very powerful option to one-shot, say, archers, to do huge damage to other vanguards or any other class. And because of that, you have more options. Yes, you can even just run around going for those big vertical slashes, and you can even have some really good overhead charged hits. It is just a very good 1v1 and 1vx weapon, and because of the damage, you'll be able to pick up kills a lot quicker and a lot easier than you will with some of the other weapons. And due to this, I feel like you're going to top the leaderboard much easier with this weapon. Now, I know some people will feel like that the mess is going to be better, and if you do, then use that. Some people think the Executioner's Axe is better, even though it is slower and weaker on the damages. And if you feel like that's the case, then I would say use it. But I feel like that as far as all the weapons go in the 1v1, two-handed hammer will probably not be able to keep up the Executioner's Axe on the leaderboard. The Executioner's Axe is always going to lose to the Messer against someone of equal skill, and I feel like the Battle Axe is just going to allow you to perform better with less work. Yes, you might be able to do better in the 1v1 with the Messer, but I feel like in the 1vx you're actually going to do better with the Battle Axe because it's got that higher damage threshold to take up people quicker. They both have the same weakness, which is their thrusts aren't the best, but I just feel like overall with the additional added usability of the Q, which you can use in running attack or even for mix-ups to really damage people's guard, it is better, and it's going to be harder for people to read to obviously then interrupt, because the wind-up for the Q on the Messer is so obvious people tend to jab. But a lot of times when I'm going for the Q on the Battle Axe, my opponents have considered that I was doing an overhead and they've tried to counter and then taking huge damage. So this is why, for me, I think this is the best weapon, and I think if you're playing a very aggressive playstyle with an axe secondary, you can use this with your fire bombs, you can use it to position enemies, you can use your throwing axes really well, and I feel like that on this class, I would say that the Battle Axe is better, whereas on the Vanguard, I'd probably say that the Messer would be better. But that's all going to be down to people's own personal preference. Let me know what you think below, where you agree, where you disagree, and any thoughts and feelings you have yourself, and which of the 3 Knight classes you think is better. Overall, for me, I think I actually enjoy the Guardian quite a bit. but I would still rather play the Footman's variant over it, so probably the Knight Officer would be the one to go to because it has that really good backup weapon. But whichever you like to use, go for that, and yeah, those are my thoughts and feelings.